Hello, it is Monday, July 10th, 2017, and it's time for the weekly update video. I have a ton of stuff to show. It's been a really busy last couple of days, for records that is. I first wanted to show, I got some records from Peter in the Netherlands. Peter, I forget what your handle is, but Peter, you always send great stuff, and he has a very broad taste in music, so always good stuff from Peter. But start with the Buffoons, Looking Ahead. This is some some Dutch 60s pop music here. So very cool stuff. Here's the Sullivan Family. I haven't get a chance to listen to this yet, but I'm excited to. Looks like there's some good over in Gloryland. There's some good traditional tunes on here for sure. But that's cool. This one just cracked me up, but I think it's so cool because it's a European pressing. Tom Jones, the green grass of home. So this is all. I was listening to this earlier. So it's all like these kind of classic country tunes. There's Detroit City on there, 16 Tons, Ring of Fire, Cool Water, Ghost Riders in the Sky, and He'll Have to Go. So I think the U.S. pressing of that is like, it's like that. It's like really Tom Jones is sort of zoomed in, so that's some fun stuff. And he also sent me these little, sort of these handbills. I kind of like this stuff, so these little ephemera. So I'm probably going to actually put those up on the wall back there. And last but not least, so Peter, you outdid yourself on this last one. So the last one he sent me was Billy Bragg, Together at Last, the first 21 songs from the roots of urbane folk music. So Billy Bragg, I kind of mentioned about it in one of the previous videos, sort of the like with the Mojo, the Mojo magazine. They loved Billy Bragg. So it was like all the cover mounts would normally have like a Billy Bragg tune. And the best way I could describe him for folks that have never heard him before is he's sort of like a punk rock, sort of Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie kind of dudes. They sort of like these protest songs where it would just be electric guitar or there's some good stuff. And I don't have any of his records, so Peter, thank you for this. This is exciting. This definitely fills a pretty big hole in my collection. But he put on there "To Have and Have Not, Best Billy Bragg Song Ever" underline. And I would have to agree with you, Peter. So a long time ago, years ago, I was really into punk music, and Lars Frederiksen and the Bastards. Lars Frederiksen is I guess you could say he's the lead guitar player for Rancid. But he does, on his first solo album, he did a cover of that. And I mean, it was such a, it was a jam. It was great. So I actually knew who Billy Bragg was through that song. And there's a couple other songs, like a New England, I know that song. Which Side Are You On? Of course, Dropkick Murphys would cover that later on. So a lot of the punk bands that I listened to were really big Billy Bragg fans. So this is great. As soon as I saw this, I was like, yeah, this is some good stuff. So thank you, Peter, for this. That's great. And then let's see. So on the Sunday, yesterday, Jerry and I did some record digging. Of course, Jerry, my number one record shopping compadre, he moved away, so we both sort of moved about a year ago, and we used to, like, every Sunday we would just go and dig and get a slice of pizza and get a beer and all that, and it was a nice little Sunday ritual. And it had been far too long, so Jerry and I sort of just listened to some tunes on my porch. We listened to the records that we bought, and just kind of chatted about life and all that good stuff. So Jerry gave me this, which we talked about trading such a long time ago. This is Harpers Bazaar, As Time Goes By, and this is actually on the Forest Bay Company. So this came out like 1976, so long after they were well beyond their prime. You can see they're all balding in the picture and what have you. But I haven't had a chance to listen to this. I'm really excited to. But this is sort of like the one Harpers Bazaar album that I didn't have. So pretty plain kind of cover and jacket and all that. So Jerry, thank you for that. And then a few records that I got some more, but I want to try to keep this video short because there's one other record I wanted to talk about here for a little bit. But I got this. This is John Fahey, A Visit to Washington, D.C. This came out in 1979, so by the end of the 70s, I want to say maybe even 70s, I think this was actually the album. But John Fahey sold Tacoma, which was sort of the record label that he sort of invented, created, I guess. He sold it to Chrysalis Records, and it sort of was becoming, I don't want to say disenchanted, but sort of just uninterested in sort of the financial side of the record business, I guess. And this record's a little more like on the avant-garde side. You know, he sort of became, he sort of became, I don't know, like folks that were like Sonic Youth, like Thurston Moore, really sort of looked up to him. I think Steve Shelley was, the drummer, was a really big John Fahey fan. But towards the end, he sort of just kind of spiraled and just gained a lot of weight because he was drinking Coca-Cola all the time and things like that. But this one is a little more on the avant-garde side. So I know we talked about John Fahey in one of the earlier videos, but if you're kind of looking at something that's maybe a little more kind of out there, this is definitely an album to pick up. So yeah, not his normal traditional kind of folk styling stuff. It's, there's some kind of jarring notes, and the tunings are kind of interesting. So this was a record I was kind of really, I've seen this before, but this is the first time I've really had a chance to, I don't know, I didn't look at any of the kind of the folk and country records this time around. I just was like, I need to kind of look at some of the rock records and see what they have. So I found this one. So Country Joe, the Paris Sessions. This came out in 1973. This is like, I think maybe his fourth solo album, I want to say. So there's sort of an interesting story behind this album. I guess he was kind of flown out to somewhere in France to play a festival, and the backing band that they had sort of went on and they did this album together. It was recorded in Paris. So it's cool. Like, it makes me kind of like want to go back, and I really want to kind of revisit his back catalog and the stuff with Country Joe and the Fish, because I think there's a lot of stuff that he did that just still hasn't quite gotten its due. But this one's a little more on the horn rock side. Of course, obviously, this is the by 73, a lot of those bands, kind of, you had Hot Tuna at this time, and Jefferson Starship are kind of taking off. So a lot of those bands that were like the Bay Area bands were sort of kind of in a weird place in the really early 70s, whereas 4 years before they were doing the Woodstock thing or whatever. So that's a cool one. I was excited to find this. The inner sleeve was actually neat too, because it as I'm like listening to this, I'm sort of like, so one side's all the Country Joe stuff, and then the other side's the Country Joe and the Fish. So kind of like makes me want to go back and sort of revisit, like I said, some of his albums. This one was a fun find. This is a white label promo. It was a little beat up. It was only $5, but this is Stone Ground. This is I want to say this is like their second, or maybe even this is definitely their second album, I think. I might be wrong. I didn't look it up though. But produced by Tom Donahue, which he was a kind of a mover and shaker, radio freeform, DJ from back in the day. Sorry, I don't think that's focusing. But I guess the kind of the big thing, if you don't know anything about this band, Sal Valentino from the Beau Brummels sort of kind of was the main dude in this. So Laugh, he kind of went on and this is definitely, I think, their second or third album. Sorry, this is their second album, I think. So, but sort of just like a really, I don't know, it's some cool stuff. I don't remember. Oh, so the band also sort of splintered towards the end, and some of the guys in the band formed Pablo Cruz, a band you may be familiar with. So that's cool. So yeah, filling a hole there. And last but not least, so when I worked at the record store, I sort of discovered the Big Lebowski movie. Kind of became obsessed with the soundtrack, all the Townes Van Zandt's on it, and Dylan stuff from A New Morning is on there, and of course Kenny Rogers in the first edition. So I knew The Gambler and Kenny Rogers, all the stuff he did with Dolly Parton in the '80s and things like that, sort of burned into my consciousness. But one day somebody brought in, I forget what it was called, some DVD that they did where they had sort of highlights from their TV show. So Kenny Rogers in the first edition, this is Rolling, the original television soundtrack. So, this show was sort of, they would bring musical guests on, and, they would sing their big hit sort of in front of the studio audience. And Kenny Rogers in the first edition would also sprinkle tunes within. I don't think it was like a variety show or anything like that. I think really the only thing that, the only really thing that they had on the DVD was just the musical performances. But there's like Bill Withers is on it, Al Green's on it, Jim Croce, B.B. King. I forget who else is on there. There's just a bunch of bands. So this is actually pretty cool. But there's some great covers on here. So there's Good Vibrations. If you want to hear Kenny Rogers singing The Long and Winding Road, look no further than the Rolling TV soundtrack. Paperback Riders on there, which is like a really awesome fuzz guitar kind of version of that. And Get Back, I Need You, which is an America tune. Coconuts on there, and then of course Morning Has Broken. And it's the album coordinator is Leland Rogers, which you psychedelic fans, I believe he was in the Red Crayola, right? Was that what it was? I think that's what it was. It's on Jolly Rogers. So yeah, some cool stuff with that. And also Mickey Jones, Mickey Jones was the drummer in the first edition, so he played drums on the Bob Dylan, Bringing It All Back Home, the Don't Look Back sort of, that whole, the Judas thing. He was playing with the band. And then also when I was on Home Improvement, he was one of the actors. He was one of the Binford guys. So, fun stuff with that. So, the last but not least, and I know this video is longer than some of the other ones, and probably only like 10 people will watch it, but I wanted to show, I got a record in the mail. I found out that this album was repressed, and I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't order it any faster, I think, than what I did. But this album, before I show it to you, this album sort of changed the way that I thought about music, and I thought about how to look for music. And I think really some of the videos that I've shared since I've returned, I guess you could say, are real evident with this. So probably in like 2000, I want to say maybe like 2009, I maybe discovered this. Before Mega Upload was taken down, and there was all these, the blog spots out there that you could just basically get, you just type in whatever you wanted and you'd find, psychedelic music. But I don't remember who shared this or whatever, it's all since gone. But this album, this is Gallivanting by William C. Beeley. It's sort of like, they refer to it sort of as like downer folk. It's sort of like a Townes Van Zandt kind of thing. It's just him and his guitar, Dylan-esque kind of thing. But this was like a privately pressed record. He only pressed like 200 of them. And I remember like right when sort of I got involved, like found out about Discogs, I would put it on I'd search on eBay looking for it and things like that. And, copies were going for like $200. And I think recently one came up for maybe like $400 on Discogs. And I say recently, probably like 2 years ago or something like that. But so the people at Tompkins Square, if you haven't checked out that website, go do it, because they have some great albums. If you're kind of into sort of like the kind of like weird folk, or not even weird folk, but just like regular folk music, just kind of like hidden gems, things like that, they're a great label for that. So getting this album, has been this has been on my want list. It was kind of like one of those records. It was like, I'm never going to get this record, but here we are. So super excited about that. So William C. Beeley, Gallivanting, and I guess he has another album that they're going to reissue coming out. I guess he has one from like the 70s or something like that, and he's going to, I think, perhaps do a new album of material or things like that. But so check out Tompkins Square. They have some great stuff. So that does it for me. Happy Monday to you all. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you on down the trail.